Thank you very much for joining us. We're going to give people just 1 minute to load in from the waiting room, and then we'll get started.
Topics for 120 years. Thank you for joining us today for our annual.
Okay. Great. It looks like everyone's in. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. This is a webinar that's really focused on understanding how California's croplands can support California's climate agenda and how our climate agenda can help support California's croplands. And the discussion is going to be utilized to inform the update to our natural and working lands climate smart strategy, which was released for the first time in 2022. And I'm going to interrupt myself because I just realized I didn't even introduce myself. I'm so sorry. My name is Amanda Hansen. I'm the Deputy Secretary for Climate Change at California's Natural Resources Agency, and I work with a number of partners across our administration to help advance nature-based solutions to climate change as part of the governor's climate agenda. And I should also just kick off with some top line logistics for everyone, some housekeeping. First is just, when folks are talking, let's try to stay muted so we don't create feedback or interruptions. The second is to just flag, we are going to be recording this webinar. So we'll post it on our website in case it's of interest to go back to what was said or to share with others. And then lastly, if anyone wants to access closed captioning, you go up to the meeting controls, which are the top of your screen, go to the right and select more. And from there, you select language and speech. And then from there, you click on turn on live captions. So with the apologies for my digression at the top, I'll just say a few things here to kick us off, which is to share we are updating the Natural Working Lands Climate Smart Strategy, and we kicked the public engagement component of that update off with a webinar that really went into how did we approach the 2022 strategy? What are ways that we're thinking about adjusting our approach for the 2025 strategy? And what are sort of the top line adjustments or shifts in California's nature-based solutions agenda in California in recent years? So if you're interested in either weighing in on any of that or just reviewing listening to what was said, that kickoff webinar is on our website, and you can watch it there. The goal of our website, of our webinar today, is to do a deep dive on croplands in particular. And as I mentioned, sort of how is it that we can manage croplands and support croplands in ways that deliver climate benefits for California, and how can our climate agenda support the health and long-term sustainability and viability of our croplands in California. I'm very, very glad to be joined by my counterpart at the California Department of Food and Agriculture, Virginia Jameson, who will introduce herself momentarily. But I think I'll just sort of stick with the top line of, our goal today is really to hear from all of you. And we're very interested in understanding ways that we can ensure the 2025 update really reflects your priorities and the latest and greatest science, and your sort of general expertise and experience. When we developed the 2022 strategy, we were really so grateful for the input that we received from experts across California to really improve and strengthen the draft strategy that we released. And so very grateful for your participation today and over the course of this year as we go through the update. Before I hand it off to Virginia, I'll just share quickly what the agenda will look like today. So I'll hand it off to Virginia, who will say a couple of opening remarks and sort of share her perspective on the purpose of today. And then Clessy, my colleague, who will also introduce herself when she starts speaking, she's going to essentially kick us off with a short presentation on, just to kind of refresh our memories, how was croplands treated in the 2022 strategy, and what are some of the next steps in the process for us to understand how the content today will be reflected, moving forward throughout the year. So with that, I just want to close with my appreciation for you all again, and I'll hand it off to Virginia to take it from here. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. I really appreciate that intro. Hi, everybody. I'm Virginia Jameson. I'm the Deputy Secretary for Climate and Working Lands at the California Department of Food and Ag. And I'm just really excited about today to get the opportunity to hear from all of you on things that we can be doing in our croplands to emphasize and plus up carbon sequestration, biodiversity, water holding capacity, all of the kind of healthy soils practices that Department of Food and Ag is trying to support. I think today I'm especially curious to hear from you all if you have ideas about encouraging practice adoption. In a lot of forums, this is a thing that we're really leaning into. Like, what are the opportunities and mechanisms to help farmers and ranchers adopt practices that may be considered climate smart or support biodiversity, that sometimes the state has money to incentivize, sometimes the federal government does, but not all the time. So things that we have thought about and have been working on include technical assistance and making good connections with NRCS and UC Ag and Natural Resources and the resource conservation districts. But if there are other mechanisms to encourage practice adoptions, we'd really like to hear about that from you. I'm also really curious to hear about circular economy solutions, like how can we be using materials that may otherwise have been considered waste, like tree cuttings or almond hulls and shells, like things like that, that we can invest back into the land or into local economies. And then also opportunities or ways we could go around about local procurement for agricultural products that have been farmed in a climate smart way. So I think I'll stop there and turn it over to Clessie. But again, just really appreciate you all being here today and for the opportunity to hear what you have been thinking. Over to you, Clessie.
Thanks, Virginia. My name's Clessie Bennett. I'm a senior environmental scientist at the Natural Resources Agency. And before I dive in, I'm going to share my screen here. All right. Can you see the presentation? Yes. Cool. All right. First, I'm going to start off with our approach to the 2025 update to the strategy. So the 2022 strategy, really the heart of that strategy were the landscape sections. And in each of these sections, we walked through California's natural and working landscapes and included information on the climate benefits that they could provide if managed in a climate smart manner. And we also identified priority nature-based climate solutions for each of these landscapes. So we're going to go through each of these sections and update them with the best available science and any new management techniques that have evolved since 2022. We'll also be revisiting our priority nature-based climate solutions and updating those as needed. Along with those sections, we will be updating our landscape maps to include the latest and greatest land cover data. We will also take the next step in advancing our approach to tracking and measuring outcomes in the natural and working land sector. We will also be including a new section in this update, and I think it speaks a bit to what Virginia was mentioning and in her opening, and that is identifying barriers to implementation of these priority nature-based solutions and identifying solutions to overcoming those barriers. And then lastly, we'll summarize our progress to date, what has happened at the state since 2022, and then update our near-term priorities for action in 2025 and going forward. So next, I'm going to talk a little bit about the process of this update. We kicked off the process on February 1st with a kickoff webinar. I put the recording to that into the chat. Over the past month, we've been holding landscape-focused workshops. This is the last of those 8 workshops. We are also holding tribal consultation and tribal roundtables this spring. We plan to release a draft of the strategy in June, and that'll be followed by a public comment period, as well as a tribal consultation period and tribal roundtables. And that will all culminate with the release of the strategy in January of next year. So as mentioned, we held workshops on each of the landscape types over the past month. You can find recordings to these on our website, and we're at the last one. So thank you all for those who have joined us for multiple of these. All right, now I'm going to dive more specifically into the croplands section from the 2022 strategy. So we defined croplands as lands that were planted in annual or perennial crops, fallowed land, and irrigated pasture. This accounts for roughly 9% of California's land base, and it's very the very large majority of these lands are privately owned at almost 98%. And as you can see from the map on the right, croplands are present in nearly every region in California, with large concentration in the Central Valley, as well as the Central Coast and down in the Imperial Valley. So croplands, especially if managed in a climate smart manner, can provide significant benefits to the state of California. They make California a global agriculture leader and are a huge economic engine for our state. And if managed well, they can provide pollinator habitat and groundwater recharge, and can even buffer against wildfire. Key to providing these services is managing these lands in a climate smart manner, including building soil health and avoiding conversion. And next, I'm going to jump into our priority nature-based solutions for this landscape, which speaks to those solutions. So we identified a number of priority nature-based climate solutions for croplands, and I'm not going to read each of these individually. I can put a link to the chat or in the chat to these after, but I am going to touch a bit on the themes that each of the solutions seeks to address. So first is building soil health through practices such as cover cropping, soil amendments, hedgerows, and more. The second is agricultural land conservation. Next, climate smart irrigation. Next is groundwater recharge, repurposing, organic waste utilization, facilitating the use of culturally significant food crops by California Native American tribes, reactivating floodplains, including through rice fields, and integrated pest management and sustainable pest management practices. So in addition to priority nature-based climate solutions on each landscape, we also included a set of cross-cutting priorities in the 2022 strategy. And these priorities were applicable across all of our landscapes. And it was through the public outreach and comment in the 2022 strategy that we realized that so many of these priorities applied to multiple landscapes that we pulled this section together. And again, I'm not going to read through each of these in detail, but I'll just mention their themes. So they include integrating equity and community engagement into implementation, emphasizing landscape level approaches and adaptive management, the importance of technical assistance and workforce development, leveraging and scaling resources through partnerships, partnering with California Native American tribes and pursuing tribal management and co-management, protecting lands that deliver multiple benefits, advancing durable conservation measures, combating invasive species, and last building the capacity of nurseries and seed banks to meet the state's restoration and reforestation goals. So with that, we're going to turn over to the discussion portion of the workshop. So just a few housekeeping items here. If you could use the raise hand function to queue up, and we'll call on you in the order that you queue up. And if you could please introduce yourself before you start speaking, that would be great. You can also put input into the chat, and we'll get to as many comments if we can, as we can. If there's something that you think of after, or you have a colleague that's not able to participate, we're also accepting feedback in written form. So these are the questions that we have prepared for today, in addition to the items that Virginia mentioned at the top of this session. And they are these four. The first two are tied to the slides that I just walked through. So first, are there any changes you'd recommend we make to the existing priority nature-based climate solutions on croplands? And are there any changes you'd recommend we'd make to those existing cross-cutting priorities? And the third and the fourth questions are really geared at our new section of the strategy. So what are the biggest barriers to implementing these nature-based climate solutions on croplands? And lastly, what solutions exist to overcome these barriers, and how can the state government most usefully advance them? So from here, we're gonna turn over to the discussion, and you all can either raise your hand to give a verbal comment or put your input into the chat. Thank you. All right, first I'm seeing Mark.
Is that me? Did you say Margaret? Okay, thank you very much. My name is Margaret Reeves. I'm a senior scientist at the Pesticide Action Network. Thank you very much for this opportunity and this great discussion. All sorts of questions come up, but the one I want to focus on is I was delighted to, and I was a member of the Sustainable Pest Management Work Group. And so I was happy to see both IPM or SPM mentioned in there, and procurement. And I'm curious about, as a real important engine, economic engine. So if growers can market their products that are climate friendly, there's almost no better engine for transition than that. What ideas do you all have for how to implement procurement?
Margaret, I just appreciate the question. I want to just flag, we're actually here to hear from all of you. We're not going to be answering questions on this call, but as you know, we are all reachable offline. So happy to discuss sort of further, but the goal is to hear from all of you today. So we're not going to be answering questions.
All right, thank you.
All right. Next, I'm seeing Jan.
Okay, there we go. I'm kind of following up on what Margaret has said, and I'm wearing my hat as second generation owner of a beneficial insect farm. My father was the first to turn beneficial insect production into an entrepreneurial business because he believed that spraying with toxic pesticides was not as smart a solution as working with insect ecology. And so in our decades and decades of being there for farmers ready to move off of toxic pesticides, we really have a unique insight into the psychology of transition. And And we would like to point out from our experience that first I'd like to say that we're findable everywhere. We're in every directory. We're all over the internet. When a farmer in California especially wants to like give up a toxic methods of pest management, they can find us, and they do. And it's usually from some traumatic experience or some major deep insight that they can't do that anymore. That the kid next door died of leukemia, or they saw what it did to the estuary, or some other environmental or health damage from what they'd been doing, and they couldn't do it anymore. And they'd have no clue. They think they're going to buy ladybugs from us. And so why isn't our phone ringing off the hook? Why are 90% of lands still subject to use of toxic pesticides? This is really a sociological and a psychological question that is not being addressed. And really, like Margaret said, the SPM roadmap should be a guide to much more than just its grand vision of moving all toxic pesticides out of California in the next 25 years. It's got everything in it to support farmers to change their mindset on everything. So farmers do not start transitioning because they want to sequester carbon. They just do not. They change first. We hear from them first because they can't poison the land of their neighbors anymore. And then they gradually learn, and our customer service people and the people in our industry are very experienced and skilled at guiding a farmer who has been lied to and brainwashed and tricked by the pesticide conspiracy that permeates our government, our universities, our every aspect. I just learned from one of our pistachio grower customers that he's going to pass up a 10% bonus at the packer because he did not spray for nasal orange worm. And he's being told by that packer that he should not try and transition to organic because he will only get 5% more on his nuts, and he have decently clean nuts. And he has to keep it a secret that he did not spray. And now he's worried sick that he turned all the Roundup in his shed back to the company, and he's not spraying his weeds, and he's going to bring in the sheep, and he's being subject to scare tactics by everybody in King County because he's thinking differently because he can't use toxic stuff anymore. And every time we thank him for wanting to change and to do something different and to learn the new things, he says, don't praise me. I don't care. I'm just trying to save money. I'm one of the few that is going to break even. Everybody who's spent money on all those toxic inputs is going bankrupt. I just want to save money. So I'm just trying to explain that from the mindset of the farmer. When you put IPM last and you don't make it a bigger effort to approach grower change through the SPM roadmap. And like Margaret says, the SPM procurement proposal, you need to have the new, if DPR has hired their new manager of the SPM program, they need to be part of these webinars.
Dan, thank you
key.
very much for this.
Okay.
We've talked about the nexus between the roadmap and the
Yeah.
natural working lands climate smart strategy. And I think our strong preference is to keep the work on pesticides really concentrated in the sustainable in that roadmap. And I'm going to actually ask to stop you there because I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to weigh in, and there's numerous hands behind you. So if there's more time later, please feel free to flag anything else that you were going to say.
I'm sorry I went over, and I'm really appreciate the chance to speak, and I'll put some more in writing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Delorier with the California Association of Sanitation Agencies, the members of which represent over 90% of the Seward population. And so we're speaking to the questions here in terms of the number one question: what changes would you recommend for the existing priority climate solutions? We do have a written comment letter that we're going to be submitting later, so I'll just highlight briefly priority A. We'd love to see that biosolids is listed as an organic amendment in addition to compost and biochar. And then as far as priority C, actually adding to that end of the statement there, and application of organic amendments, and again include compost, biosolids, and biochar. So we'll put that in writing. But to get back to something that Virginia had mentioned about circular economy, looking at priority F, we do think that, WRFs have been recognized by the State Water Board, and WRFs are water resource recovery facilities. So we do a lot of recovering of resources at wastewater treatment plants. And so they have been recognized by the State Water Board and CalRecycle for their available capacity to receive divertible and digestible organic waste that, the Senate Bill 1383 mandate is really requiring 75% diversion of organics. Well, about 30% of that's food waste, and we can take all of that food waste in our existing digestion capacity at wastewater treatment plants. So there's some good cost effectiveness there, as well as when you co-digest it, you develop that biosolids as well as biogas. And so both of those products are something we can then bring back as far as a circular economy into use in society. So biosolids to offset the synthetic fertilizer, and then biogas to offset either energy, on-site energy, which is just increasing our own resilience at our wastewater treatment plants, which are essential public services, or in other uses like pipeline or transportation fuel. And so let's see, I have one change in terms of the actual language for the priority F is just to change from compost creation to organic amendment creation. So then it just references compost, biosolids, and biochar. And as far as the changes to existing cross-cutting priorities, we were looking at really just acknowledging the beneficial use of biosolids across all of the different landscapes, or where they, can be land applied. Of course, they meet regulatory requirements in terms of the biosolids and how they're treated, so that you can land apply them. And most of these landscapes or additional measures can be taken to make sure that they meet the requirements for those lands. And so we just asked for some amendments to at least acknowledge that benefit. And as far as barriers to the use of biosolids for these different purposes and benefiting or actually achieving additional carbon sequestration, which are renewable resource, one of the biggest barriers has been the county level ordinances that are limiting land application of biosolids. They may not have had a basis for limiting those, other than having some concerns about their safety, but we address those through our regulations. And so we are working with, in terms of a solution, CalRecycle, to modify the ordinances. And we need, though, additional support from Natural Resources Agency, their resource board, and regional water boards, because they hold the permits for land application. So We will provide more detail on that in our letter, but wanted to state those here publicly just to see if you had any questions or if there's additional need there for feedback. But appreciate the opportunity to share those. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Letitia.
Hi, thank you. My name is Leticia Benador. I'm the Senior Policy Advocate at CCOF. So we represent over 3,000 organic producers in California. I'm really excited to be discussing croplands today. And we are submitting a comment letter today that will be more detailed. And also can definitely have more follow-up conversations, but just kind of wanted to share our high-level thoughts around this. We're going to recommend adding scaling up organic agriculture as a priority solution, and we provide kind of the rationale for that in the comment letter. There are three kind of main barriers to the adoption of organic, and this transfers to other climate smart practices too. So the first is kind of a willingness on the part of the producer to do it. The second would be an agronomic or technical assistance barrier, while the farmer learns these new management practices. And then the third is kind of an economic and supply chain barrier, because values-based supply chains are not really as well developed. Buyers aren't as well educated, and the producers making large investments during this transition period, so there's a lot of risk. So, you know, CDFA has already taken a number of steps to try to work on alleviating these barriers. We would recommend continuing to invest in the Organic Transition Program, which addresses the agronomic and economic barriers. And then what I really want to focus on is investing in building access to market opportunities for these climate smart products and organic products. And local procurement is a really great way to do that. And so we would love to see the state create a procurement program that prioritizes the purchase of climate smart foods. There's really no better indicator that the state believes in what we're doing here than if the state can kind of, you know, put its money where its mouth is, so to speak, and start investing in the producers that are doing climate smart practices. CDFA's Farm to School program is already kind of building up some of that infrastructure. We would recommend continuing to invest in that. CDFA's Food Hubs program, which is new and needs to be developed still, will fill really critical infrastructure gaps and kind of get every region set up with these smaller aggregator distributors that can support the smaller climate smart producers and actually bringing their products to market. And in general, we recommend prioritizing the purchase of climate smart products wherever there's public dollars going to procurement. We're involved in initiatives around procurement for food as medicine and hospitals. There's a lot of opportunity, there's a lot of market demand, and we can play a really critical role in filling some of these supply chain gaps. You know, I was on the phone with the farmer the other day and they're like, I really want to sell to this school who's right here. And we just can't because there's like X number of barriers, and we know those things, and there's already programs working on them. And we can continue to have that discussion. So those are my high level thoughts, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Next is Andrew.
Hi, everyone. Appreciate the chance to speak today. My name is Andrew Ferguson. I'm a project and business developer with Dr. And we are a technology company that transforms nitrogen-rich organic waste streams from agriculture into sustainable fertilizers and renewable energy sources. And I'll be touching on a few things related to increasing the percentage of organic farming, as well as supporting mechanisms for sustainable fertilizers. So touching on a few points that Letitia just mentioned, we would like to see a greater focus on increasing the percentage of organic farming in California. There's great scope of plans and targets, and we feel like organic farming and a couple of supportive financial mechanisms behind that are really important. And one of the big factors that we'd love to see implemented would be a low carbon fertilizer standard designed to incentivize both the use and production of renewable fertilizer and support organic farming further. And this would be a key policy to enable meeting the state's organic agriculture and climate change targets. And we see renewable fertilizers as key to enabling the organic industry to scale, and it will come with additional climate, energy, and emissions benefits, such as improving nitrogen use and decreasing pollution, and will help soil health, circular economy outcomes for organic waste utilization, and also avoid emissions from fossil fuel use for production of conventional fertilizers. So I'd like to say thank you for taking time to take our comments. We'll be providing written comments in greater detail, and I look forward to sharing those with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Catherine. If you're speaking, you may be muted. We're not able to hear you. I'm going to go to the next speaker and I'll try again in a minute. Jane?
Yeah, hi. Jane Sellen. I'm co-director of the statewide Coalition Californians for Pesticide Reform. We are a coalition of more than 200 groups and organizations who share a goal of for a fourfold platform of eliminating the most hazardous agricultural pesticides, reducing the use of the rest, hastening the transition to sustainable agriculture, and increasing the right to know about pesticide applications. And I don't really have particularly responses to your discussion questions, but just wanted to comment and speak in support of the incorporation of the final recommendations of the AB 1757 Expert Advisory Committee into the Climate Smart Strategy, and in particular, the inclusion of reduction of pesticides and expansion of opportunities for to access organic agriculture, as well as the pathways offered by the committee to get there and measure progress. We also support the critical equity goals in their recommendations, such as achieving a just transition in agriculture for farm workers, and also addressing barriers to farmland access and land tenure, especially for historically underserved groups. These solutions would help combat the climate crisis while also helping achieve environmental justice in our food systems. And I thank you for this document and for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Ron?
Thank you. My name is Ron Whitehurst. I'm a pest control advisor with Rincon, Viterbo, and Sectaries. And I was also a member of the Sustainable Pest Management Work Group. So I really recommend that you look at the 50 or so aspects of recommendations for reducing pesticide use. Most of those also will reduce the carbon footprint of our food and help support communities as well. A big aspect of what I'm suggesting is implement the programs and suggestions from the SPM work group. As far as barriers go, the state has been a big barrier for the last 50 years. The state, through the university, the extension, and then Caltrans, as far as pesticide use, has promoted the use of chemical fertilizers and toxic pesticides to the detriment of the people of the state of California. And so, look in a mirror, and if you're looking at barriers, that where are your state programs encouraging farmers and gardeners to use chemical fertilizers and chemical pesticides? There's probably quite a number of places where that's taking place. Then, another big barrier is FSMA, the Food Safety Modernization Act, and other aspects of the leafy greens marketing order that are concerned about poopy contamination in the food supply that make people sick. If I understand it right, there has not been any organic produce that has made people sick or has been identified with the pathogenic bacteria and so on being present in the food. That's all been commercial, chemically oriented production. A lot of the chemicals used in agriculture, especially the fungicides and stuff, will kill off the beneficial bacteria, and so that there's just the pathogens left. So evaluating where the state is supporting those food safety processes to the detriment of the environment would be very useful. We promote the use of habitat strips of flowering plants along the edges of fields to host the beneficial insects to implement biological control. And so in the move to eliminate wildlife from an area and their corresponding poop, those habitat strips have been removed. And so that would usually lead to increased pesticide use and degradation of the environment. If you want farmers to do something, pay them. It's relatively straightforward, value for value proposition there. There's the Healthy Soils Program, and it is the intent is really wonderful, but still it's a pain in the butt for farmers to actually apply for it, and then they have to wait for the payment 6 months, a year, whatever, down the road. And the structure of the program is such that it's usually the larger farmers that have somebody that can fill out the paperwork that will get those the grant. So opening that up, so it's much easier to get the practices, and supporting multiple practices on the same farm and repeated practices year after year. So appreciate all the work that you've done. We've got a lot of work to do to restore the life in the soil so that when it rains, the rain soaks in and is there available to grow more plants, preferably perennial trees and shrubs that also produce food. So thanks for all of your work.
Thank you. We're going to go back to Catherine.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yay. I switched computers. My name is Catherine Dodd. I'm a registered nurse, a public health nurse, a member of the Alliance of Nurses for Healthy Environments, and I'm representing FACTS, Families Advocating for Chemical and Toxic Safety. I want to echo Sarah's comments about the circular economy in terms of organic compost. You can't have organic compost if you have hazardous chemicals, including pesticides and PFAS, et cetera. So the importance of eliminating those in order to preserve that circular economy and prevent climate change can't be underscored enough. I also want to mention the importance of the market smart, the procurement ideas, which you've included but need to be expanded. Think of childcare. Think of all the kids in childcare that should start out their lives eating healthy organic food. If we just require childcare in public schools to use organic foods, or to at least prioritize that purchase, we would create a market. It would bring down the cost, and it would save fields. When you have a healthy soil, it absorbs water better. We're looking at more El Nino and more flooding in the Pajaro Valley and our Central Valley. So you all understand it's not just a circular economy, it's a circular health of our land. What are the barriers? The barriers are lack of research, technical assistance, and there's, as has been said, there must be increased incentives to do this. And all you have to do is think for 1 minute about the incentives for farming from the federal government. That farm bill is supposed to go through by Friday. We'll see. And there are no incentives for organic farming in it. And the incentive issue, California's out there on reproductive rights. California needs to be out there as a major farming state on organic farming and reducing climate change by reducing pesticide use and the fossil fuels that go into pesticide use. So those are some of the barriers. I hope that the idea of a just transition is included for farmers of color, and they're largely small farmers and family farmers. But I really want you to remember the children, not just because of what they're eating every day, but because of the earth that we're leaving them. I know that you guys deal with this every day, day in and day out, but you can make a huge difference. And California could be a leader in the country the way we are on women's reproductive freedom. Thank you for all the work you put into this. Keep going and expand pesticide-free solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Brian.
Yeah, hi, Amanda and Plessy. I'm Brian Shobe. I'm the policy director with the California Climate and Agriculture Network. And first, just want to thank you for diligently listening to all the comments today. I would first second the comments from Leticia Benador on adding scaling up organic agriculture to the list of croplands priorities. For the cross-cutting priorities, we have 3 recommendations. And I'm just going to summarize the recommendations, and I'll leave the rationale for our letter. The first recommendation is to split the 3rd priority, which starts with empowering all Californians, into 2 priorities, with one focused on youth outreach and education, and the other focused on technical assistance, workforce development, and capacity building. Both merit attention and resources. Just think we should think about them separately. They're distinct enough. The second recommendation is to add a new priority to research, pilot, and remove regulatory barriers to agrivoltaics and ecovoltaics as a way to maintain agricultural production amidst increasing utility scale solar development, as a way to avoid bare soil and the associated dust and weed challenges that come with that, and as a way to reduce the need for conversion of intact ecosystems like deserts for solar development. And that's why we think this fits in the cross-cutting priority section. And then lastly, we would add a recommendation or a priority around improving regulatory efficiency for land stewardship practices that mitigate climate change and improve resilience. And we provide a number of examples in the letter, so I'll just leave it there. And then on barriers and solutions, there's too many to list now. We do include a summary in our comment letter, and I also just wanted to direct your attention to 2 other documents that a large number of folks who work in agriculture have contributed to recently. The first is the comment letter that CalCan and I think 15 or so other groups submitted as part of the 1757 Expert Advisory Committee process last fall, and wanted to, if you haven't seen it, remind you that our letter includes spreadsheets for solutions in croplands and grasslands, where we included research literature for every solution and also barriers and solutions. And then also last fall, CalCan released a climate platform for California agriculture, which includes 50 policy recommendations in this space. You can see them all right at the top of the document in that at a glance list. And that was developed in consultation with 60 experts and farmers and ranchers we interviewed last year. So hope you can take a look at that as you're doing this important work, and good luck, and look forward to talking further. Thanks.
Thanks, Brian. Is there anyone else who hasn't given a comment that would like to? We have about 9 minutes or so left. So there is the chance, if you haven't gotten to speak, to do so now. Elena.
Yeah, hi. Sort of a last minute comment. My name is Elena Bishak. I'm from the California Association of Resource Conservation Districts. I'm the Ag Program Manager there and also managing the RCD Regional Ag and Climate Hub Program. Kind of a long intro, but I was wondering if on letter F here that talks about circular economy, if it was, I know that it's like including but not limited to, but if you could add biochar production as a priority, and particularly on farm biochar production. And I'm just curious if folks have thought about how, like, you know, burn bans in the San Joaquin Valley might limit on farm biochar production, but I think it's something that, you know, we should prioritize working around that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who hasn't gotten a chance to weigh in yet? Okay, if not, I'm going to circle back to those hands that are still up to see if you have a final thing you wanted to add. And first on Margaret, if you're speaking, we cannot hear you.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to have my hand up still.
No problem. Next is Jan. And if you're speaking, we can't hear you. And last, Ron.
Actually, Jan wanted to make a further comment.
Thank you for your patience with me. I've just, you know, come from working with so many growers who are experiencing terrible economic pressures. I understand that all around Visalia and King County, for sale signs are going up, and the input costs are extraordinary, and they've been brainwashed into thinking they have to buy these toxic inputs, and the support for that seems like a very high priority, and once we connect with even one grower that is ready to think outside the box about how to farm, and stand up to the scare tactics and the incredible pressure from every side to make any changes at all outside of what their neighbors are doing, then they get it. They get the whole picture. They get how they can also help sequester carbon and save the birds and the bees. And the whole thing becomes possible in their mindset. But it's really the barrier is that they've been the lies about their reliance on these outside inputs is so powerful. So whatever we can all do to support them in, first, I would have to still say the SPM roadmap is critical to your success, I believe. And I just saw an email while I was waiting here that there is a new director for that program. I'm very impressed. We should be expecting a lot from him. And then the next thing is building skills for on-site production of inputs, on-site high quality compost, rewarding, and the HSP program doesn't clearly reward the use of high quality compost extracts, not teas. Teas can degrade, but the newest science is how cost effective it is to grow your own with indigenous microorganisms, high fungal dominance in your compost that you can turn into both inoculants for drenches, for sprays, and for seed coatings. All of these that reduce the farmer's reliance on outside input so they can stay in business growing something. Thank you again for listening.
Farmer's footprint.
Yeah, farmer's footprint is a very a very interesting model for how to provide a support group for the farmers who are ready to change and facing the unbelievable social pressure. Family, neighbors, church members, you know, their packers, their marketers. That needs to be part of your programs, is that sociological sensitivity to what growers are going through in breaking the habit of toxic inputs. Thank you again.
Thank you. And with our last minute here, I'm just gonna put up this last slide here. We are at the end of our month of workshops. Thank you all for sticking with us throughout the past couple weeks. We are accepting written input, and we can always be reached at the email on the slide, naturebasedsolutions@resources.ca.gov. And with that, we are at the top of the hour. So thank you all so much for joining and providing your input.
Thank you.
Thank you.